Welcome everybody to Square One. I'm really excited to be sharing uh, some stories about how we can begin, how we can start. I feel like uh, a lot of us are in the place where we're trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. This is an interesting time, and hopefully I can share some tips and tricks and things with you all to help you get back to square one and feel like you're in a place where you can get some things done. Um, to start with, I just wanted to say thanks to Jim Fickley. He's going to be sharing some thoughts at the end as well. And my name is Jose Castillo. I started Flavor Inc., hosting and emceeing for experiences and events around the world. I also co-founded Spark Plaza along with my wife, Shannon Castillo, a co-working space here in Johnson City. And every year I take time to reflect and find out what I did the past year and then what I'm going to do the year that's coming up. And while normally I would do this process in December and January, this is something you can do anytime. It doesn't have to be at the beginning of the year. As a matter of fact, I think we all have a little extra time right now. So now is a good time to do this as well. First of all, I want you to ask yourself the question, why are you doing this? In other words, why are you here right now listening to this? Take out your pen, paper, and just jot a couple thoughts down on why you're doing this. Is it, I'm looking for a job. I want to figure out how to tell my story better. I want to find out what I'm good at and how I can do that in the right way. Maybe you're looking for a career change. Maybe you're in a place where you're in limbo. You really don't know what's next. I know I'm in that boat as well, trying to figure out, where the next gig is going to come from. What is business going to look like? And we're also in a time where we have a little bit of time. We're maybe spending more time at home with our families, maybe in our own apartment, but we have a little bit of time that we can fill with something good. And I think asking that first question, why are you doing this, is important. So write out a couple thoughts on that. And that's really important to go back to when you start a process like this, is asking yourself, why am I doing this? Do I want to make myself better? Do I want to answer some questions in my life? Always starting with why. And that's a great book and resource as well, Start With Why by Simon Sinek. Excellent resource. But I want to go through a list of these words. Like when I picked square one, I think some people see that negatively, right? Like back to square one. When you talk about going on a retreat, it's like retreat, like we're running away from something. Back to basics sounds like, man, I'm starting over. Relax. Have you ever told somebody to relax that needed to relax? Did they relax when you told them that? Probably not. Start over, failure, rebuild, backtrack. All of these words have negative connotations. Well, why is that? Well, I think there's a couple reasons. One is part of it is cultural. I think in America, we have that westward ho, go west, young man. We don't like to lose, but it's also human nature. None of us like to lose from a human nature aspect as well. And I think the stigma has been set that when you go back to square one, when you retreat, that you're doing something that's not good. And I think it's time for us to give ourselves the opportunity to change the meaning of that word, to say that square one and retreat and back to basics is a good thing. And why is that? Well, what do you do if you're lost in the woods? I grew up in Boy Scouts. My dad can attest to this. There were times when we were out in a canoe on a river somewhere, and all of a sudden you look around and you're like, I don't recognize any of this. So what do you do when you're lost in the woods? Well, most people panic, right? We run around and we scream and yell and we take off on tangents and go this way and that. And the number one thing you should do is not panic, right? We don't want to panic in a situation like that. And if you go to survival experts, like Bear Grylls and some of these other guys out here, these guys that go out and do this alone in the woods, and you ask them, what do you do if you get lost? The first thing they're going to tell you is, first of all, you need to assess the situation. If you believe yourself to be lost in the woods, first thing anyone should do is stop, sit down, calm down, and assess the situation. And I feel like a lot of times in our lives, mine as well, when we feel like we're lost, we instantly start to run around. Our hair's on fire, we're panicking, we're trying to figure out what to do. We throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. If we've lost our job, if we're in a crisis, that's typically what we do, when we should take a deep breath and assess the situation. And that's hopefully what this process of Square One will give you some tips and tricks to do. Square One is 4 simple things: review, celebrate, plan, and activate. I've got some different things I'm going to break down underneath this for you all, but this is a process that I go through, but realize that you need to make this your own. This is something that hopefully you'll go through on a regular basis, and you can add to it and make it something different and unique for yourself as you start to go through it. A couple things you need to do before you do this process. First of all, relax. Remember how I told everybody to relax? The person that doesn't relax, well, relax. This is a process, but you need to make it your own. You need to tweak it as you go through it. And you really need to set aside some time to do this. Some of us can do this in a half a day. We're pros. We can go through all the questions. We've got all the answers, come up with our plan, and move ahead. Some of us, it's going to take a day, maybe 2 days, maybe 3 days to go through this. And we need some breathing time between some of these exercises to let our brain think over things. So realize that this process is something you can do very short, very long, but you need to make sure that you do the process in a way that gives you the freedom to come up with the right answers for yourself. The second thing is unplug. Whenever you schedule this time to do this, unplug everything. Put it in airplane mode, no outside interruptions. I get it. You're in a house, probably with some other people, and it's hard to do that, but schedule it. Be like, hey, I'm going to shut the door to this room. I'm going to be in here for the next 2 hours, 4 hours, whatever it is, and then turn it all off because we get so distracted. And I've been guilty of this during the global pandemic, right? Where you turn on Netflix or you go down the rabbit hole with Facebook and you look up and it's an hour and a half later and you're like, where did the time go? So when you're going through this process, you really have to make sure that it's allowing unstructured, uninterrupted moments of quiet. And that's something we don't get a lot in our daily lives, but it's super important for reflection. The third thing is prepare. Pen, papers, markers, Post-it notes, books, all the resources you need. Make sure you have them with you when you start this. I carry a pen and paper with me. Most of you know this is my little notebook I carry with me 24/7, pretty much every day, anywhere I go. I carry this in my pocket, and I have one for every month. So as you can see, this is April. April's almost done, and I've got my next one right here, ready to go in the plastic that I'll open up and start May 1. I like writing things down because the studies show that when you put a pen to paper, something happens in your brain differently than when you type or when you text. So put a pen to paper, pencil to paper, whatever. I also like putting things up on the wall, giant Post-it notes or small Post-it notes or just tape and paper. When you write all of these pieces out, make sure you put them up where you can visually see them. We put information on our phones and on our laptops, and then as soon as the screen changes, it's gone. We don't see it anymore. So in order to have a good overview of everything, this is why you see people that have 17 monitors. It's so they can see everything at once. It's like a dashboard. So you need to be prepared for when you write all this information out, being able to see it all at once. So big clean wall, some tape and paper, and as you write things out, put them up so you'll be able to see them all physically in one place. And finally, flow. I know most of us are not writers, and I guarantee somebody out there is like, Jose, I can't write. I'm not good at cursive. I don't know how to, put adjectives and adverbs together. Don't worry about that. You need to give yourself some grace and realize that this is not for edited to be published into a book. This is just for you to get information out of your head onto paper. So get comfortable with just writing things down. There's a great book called Flow by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. I know this name, it took me like 3 years to be able to pronounce it, but the book Flow talks about being in a zone where you can create and your brain is free to do the best things that it can do. And a lot of that comes with taking stuff out of your brain. So when you write things down, it comes out of your brain onto the paper, and then your brain can be freed up to do other things. So get used to writing and just do it. Put pen to paper, write it down, and it'll come out, and you'll be able to free up your brain to do other things. So these are the 4 things you need to do to kind of prepare for this time. And go ahead and schedule. Put it on the calendar. Hey, this day, this couple of days, this 4-hour block, this 2-hour block, whatever, put it in your calendar, set an alarm on it so it dings you and lets you know you need to go through this square one process. All right, number 1, review. It's hard to review things unless you have things to review. And it's tough, especially if you're starting this for the first time. You may be a little frustrated that you're not able to find everything to review from a previous year. That's okay. Give yourself, a pat on the back that you're not going to have to do that the next time around, because now you're going to capture all this information and you'll be able to look at it next year. But when you review, you want to start with reflection. Number 1 is, who am I? There's a lot of great books and resources. Jim Fickley is going to share some at the end of this talk. Strength Finders 2.0, Enneagram, personality test, skills test, etc. I'm sure some of you have taken some of these things. You may even have those pieces already that you could look at. But asking yourself those questions: who am I? What are the skills and gifts I've been given? How do I use them in my job, in my life? It's really important to start there so that you know what you're working with. Second question to ask is, what happened this past year? There's some great questions from Darren Hardy, his book, Living Your Best Year Ever. And I love his question, what are the 10 greatest happenings from the previous year? And you think about something that you either were a part of or that happened to you. It's a great way to ask yourself, what are some things that happened this last year? Write down the good, the bad. Ask yourself questions. Did you meet some goals? Did you not meet some goals? That's okay. And again, what you're doing is you're cataloging all this as you're writing them. So where do you find all this information? Because a lot of people are like, Jose, that's great to ask myself those questions, but I can't remember everything. So you need to go back into the tool that you use the most. Some of you, it's email, calendars. For me, it's notebooks. I write everything down. So this actually is 2019 right here. This is every single month that I wrote everything down for that year. So I go back through and read every single one of these. And this is my review. I get to reflect on the year. But for you, it may be, where do you keep your information? If you're in sales, it may be looking at your sales information. If you're somebody who's working with a family and with kids, maybe it's the family calendar to look at the previous year. But wherever you keep your information, wherever you keep your content, that's where you need to go back to look, to ask yourself what happened this past year, and write it all out. These are the good, these are the bad, etc. Final thing under reflection is lessons and growth. What did I learn? What improvements did I make? And this is, if you set goals the previous year, or if you set New Year's resolutions, etc., this is an opportunity to look at, hey, did I learn something new? Did I improve on something? I said I was going to do this, did I? And don't beat yourself up. Just be honest. I did this or I didn't do this. But writing that out, and again, as you're writing these things, you're going to be able to see patterns of, oh, I did this or I didn't do this, and why did I do this? And what can I learn from that? The other big part of that is relationships. Asking yourself questions about the people that you work with, your family, your spouse, your friends. One of my favorite quotes is that you will become the average of your 5 closest friends. I'm going to say that one more time. You will become the average of your 5 closest friends. So if you look at the 5 people that you spend the most time with, you're going to become like them. So reviewing those relationships, did I make any new friends? Did I lose any friends this year? How were my relationships this year is another great way to look at how did I do. Um, sorry. The other thing you need to ask under review is values, mission, and battle cry. And I'll go through these really simple. I know values is such a hard word to wrap your head around. And there's a great link here to a really simple Forbes article that can give you some resources to find out what your values are. But this is really important because values are the lens that we see the world through. And if we don't know what we value, what we really care about, then it's easy for us to get lost in the weeds. And so we need to understand what things are important to us. So writing out your values. And for some people, it's looking at a list of values and going, oh yeah, these are the things that are important to me. For others, it's very personal where you write them out and come up with your own. But there's a couple great resources in this and in some of the books that we recommended and Jim will talk about later that will give you some insight into your values. Second thing is a simple mission statement. If you don't have one, I get it. People, are like, mission statements are boring. It's hard for me to come up with one. I understand, but it's also important to have a good compass to know why you do what you do. So for me, I write down my mission statement in the front of my notebook so I have it. And for me, it's add flavor, connect people, serve others. Those are the three things that I need to be doing every day. And if I'm not doing that, then I know I'm not living up to my mission. It can be a word, a phrase, a statement, whatever, but that's important. And this is a good time to come up with that by looking at your values, by looking at your skills and all this information that you're starting to write out. You're going to start to see themes and be able to pull pieces from that and come up with a mission statement that will serve you. And finally, battle cry. What's a battle cry? A battle cry is something that is in the moment that allows you the opportunity to remind yourself why you're doing something. I think if you're like me, ADD, hard to remember stuff, etc., maybe you don't need a mission statement. Maybe you just need a battle cry. Think of some of the great battle cries of the world. Remember the Alamo, Geronimo. There were all these great battle cries, and it was a rallying call to say, we're all doing this because of this. We're fighting this battle because this happened, and this is why we're doing it. So how do you make your own battle cry? Well, I've come up with the not patented yet Battle Cry Maker 5000. It should be 5 words or less. You should be able to yell it out. Mine is add flavor. So that's my battle cry in life. If I bring that one thing to the table, then I know I've done my job. The yell test. Can you yell it? Add flavor. Yeah, I can yell that. It's good. Distilling down your mission statement. Sometimes mission statements can be really wordy. If I were to ask people who worked for an organization that had a mission statement right here, right now, if I put $100 on the line and said, I want you to say your company's mission statement word for word, would you be able to do it? Probably not. So distill your mission statement down to something that is a battle cry you can say in one breath. T-shirt test. Does it make a good T-shirt? Then it's probably a battle cry. The trebuchet test. If you're throwing something from a medieval siege engine and you yell this out, does it feel good? Is it memorable? Does it have deep meaning? These are all questions you can ask yourself when you're making your own battle cry. Second part is celebrate. This is my favorite part of this. I love to celebrate. And I think we have forgotten how to celebrate. We live in a pace of life and a culture that doesn't reward celebration. We reward on to the next thing. We reward, what have you done for me lately? And we have forgotten how to celebrate, how to take a step back, sit down, raise a glass and say, look what happened here. This is great. People came together and this happened. So I've come up with a couple things to help you. How do I celebrate? So in this process that you're doing, whether it's a half a day or 3 days, schedule a time for a meal. Enjoy your favorite things, whether it's cooking it yourself or ordering out from your favorite restaurant. I realize we're in a global pandemic. This may look a little different right now for a celebration meal, but set it up the best way that you can with music, with atmosphere. And one of my favorite things to do during this time is I usually do a steak dinner. I get a glass of red wine. Hopefully I'm by a fire somewhere. And I like to take my laptop or phone, and most of us take photos during happy moments in our lives, right? We use our phone to capture the moments that we're most proud of. So on iOS, Android, Google Photos, etc., you can go back to the previous year, and there's a little button that says Create Slideshow, and you can just hit a button, set your phone up, set your laptop up, and look at photos from the previous year, and it will just cycle through all these amazing memories and experiences and events. I cry every time I do this. Seriously, every year when I do this and I set my phone, because I see pictures of my kids, I see pictures with my wife, I see trips that I've taken, I see memories that I've made with my friends, and it's a great way to celebrate the previous year and look at all the fun things that you've done. Some other things that you can do when you're writing down information as part of this is capture those moments. So write down, I am most proud of these accomplishments. And write them down. What are the things that you're most proud of? One of the other things about celebration is that it should be shared. And I think the best way to share that is to thank the people that were a part of your success. Write a handwritten note, send an email or text message, pick up the phone and call somebody, and schedule some time to thank all of those people that helped you be successful. What a great way to celebrate is to encourage the people that were part of encouraging you to celebrate with you. All right, number 3, plan. This is the one where the rubber starts to meet the road. It gets a little bit tougher, but you can do it. I know you can. If I can do it, you can do it. This exercise, I love it. And Jim Fickley asked me to do this exercise about 5-6 years ago. He's like, Jose, he's like, I want you to dream big. And the question that struck me the most was, what would you do in your life if money and time were no obstacle? And that is a question we should ask ourselves all the time, but it's important to ask it as part of this review process, because if those aren't barriers to entry, then what would we do? And what it really does is it gets to the heart of, what do we love to do? What's our passion? What are the things that we get super excited about? And I love asking myself this question. And what I really enjoy doing is asking this question of random people. And if you want some fun, next time, when we're out of this situation and you're just running to somebody randomly, and maybe they're having a tough day, maybe they're not being happy where they're at. Maybe it's somebody at a fast food restaurant, or, the ticket agent at the airport. Ask them, what would you do if in your life, if money and time were no obstacle? That's a great question to ask other people, and you'd be surprised at the responses you'll get. The other question asked is, what would it look like in 2021 to celebrate your accomplishment? And this is front loading it. So you're basically saying, hey, next year, when I get together and do my review, what would it look like to celebrate in that moment, raise a glass to what I accomplished? And what would that accomplishment look like? And you're basically setting up the goal and rewarding yourself ahead of time. You're saying, hey, I'm going to celebrate this when I achieve this next year. And the final question when you dream big is, how could you change the world? Yeah, it's a big question, but it's possible. And people change the world every day, in little ways and big ways. And I think it's important for us to go through that and write that down of, how would we change the world? Next up is legacy. I love the way this is worded. And Jim, I think this came from you. I don't know where, but this definition of legacy, I think, is super important, because we all throw around that word legacy. But legacy is who we are and the way we live our lives that determines our legacy. Our legacy includes convictions, character, and behavior. It's our relationships. It's how we treat people. Our legacy is known mostly by those close to us, but also by a broader base of people, depending on our profession and involvements. Ask yourself the question, what will be your greatest contribution in life? That's a tough one. It's tough to answer that question, but I think it's great to write down those answers. And it could be multiple things, or it could be a brainstorming exercise where you're like, you know what, I don't really know what it is, but I have a feeling it's around these things. And once you write that out, then it's, how will you accomplish it? What are the small steps that you're going to take to meet that? And then finally, I love this. Some people call this the tombstone exercise or the eulogy exercise. How do you want to be remembered? What will somebody say about you at your funeral? What will they read out loud and say, this person did this, 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 and this? Is it a short eulogy? Is it a long eulogy? Is it something that inspires other people? I love Alfred Nobel. We all know the Nobel Prize. It's a prize for peace, people that are bringing peace around the world. And what's interesting is Alfred Nobel was not known for peace initially. He was the man who invented dynamite. He invented a lot of weapons of war. And his brother passed away. And there was a newspaper, I think in Austria, that published a obituary for him instead of his brother. And Alfred Nobel read his own obituary. And it said, this man brought more war and pestilence to this world than anyone else has in this modern age. And it shook him to his core. And what did he do? He took almost all of his money. The man was a multi-millionaire. He took all of his money and he said, I want to establish a prize for peace. And now, when you say the word Nobel Peace Prize, it's because of the legacy of someone who thought he was dead, read his own obituary and said, I need to change, and created something that wound up being a push for peace. Now that's a cool legacy. Finally, under plan, how do we actually make things happen? Well, it took me a while to come to this, and this works for me. Some people set goals, and goals are great, but a lot of times we don't achieve them. And I think it's because it's sandwiched with two other things, right? We have a desired outcome, like I want to be more healthy. And that requires a goal. And the goal for me, I want to weigh 180 pounds. Well, I need action items in order to get there. So I need to work out 2 to 3 times a week for 30 minutes in order to become more healthy, which is weighing 180 pounds. So for me, this is a good way to look at a goal. It's not just a goal, it's a desired outcome, a goal, and an action item. So pick 1 to 3 things that you want to look at for next year. And again, you're looking at all of the words, all of the things that you've written up on the wall so far. As you're going through this process, you're creating lots of content, but you need to be able to see that as you're going through this. And pick 1 to 3 things. You're like, hey, these are desired outcomes that I would like to happen next year. And then you can set goals in order to reach those. You can say, well, here's the mark, here's the finish line. I know that I'm going to cross the finish line on this goal when I reach this. And then finalize 1 simple action item for each desired outcome. So if the desired outcome is, man, I'd love to get a job in marketing. And then the goal is to be hired by January of, next year. And then here's my action items in order to get there. I'm going to redo my resume, get my free headshot from Earl. I'm going to, do my 20-minute coaching session with Jim. And these are the action items that I'm going to take to get to that desired outcome. And finally, activate. I used to use the word execute with this, but I don't like execute. I think it sounds bad. So I switched it to activate. And what I like about the word activate is that it has a lot of power with it, a lot of positive power. And I'm going to go to the world of NASCAR to help explain that, because what does activate mean? What does activation mean? So this is me interviewing the Budweiser Clydesdale at the South Point Casino 400 at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. What does that have to do with activation? So Las Vegas Motor Speedway sells the sponsorship of the race to South Point and Budweiser. So South Point Casino buys that, sponsorship. They pay money to have their name attached to this race. But if they just paid money to pay for the race, then that's just a sponsorship. Well, the second part, the most important part, is that they activate their sponsorship. And this is a big word in events and experiences. And activation means that they have a huge floor plan. They bring the Budweiser Clydesdales out there and let fans see them. They have massages. They have a big footprint out in the fan zone area. They give out stickers. They give out little poker chips, etc. All these things are part of the activation. So you can have an amazing goal. You can set up this amazing plan, But if you don't spend as much time and energy and effort on the activation of it, then it's probably going to fail. And a lot of people, you'll see that come into a space and sponsor something in NASCAR or event and experience, and they just put their name on the building or the event, and they don't see a lot of return out of it. Well, it's because they're not activating. So what do we do to activate our plan that we've come up with? The first thing you need to do is review all of your notes. And hopefully by now, after either a half a day or 2-3 days, you should have pages and pages of notes. And it's really important to review all of those. Go back, highlight, underline things that are really important. Scratch stuff out that you're like, that's not really important. That's not something that I'm going to focus on this year, or that I don't need to worry about right now. But reviewing all that is really important. Second thing is pray, meditate, reflect on what the overarching theme could be. A lot of times when you look at all of those pages up on the wall, you'll start to see a commonality. You'll start to see a theme throughout it. And for me, I like to finalize a word or phrase for the year. I'll go back to my notebook here and show you in the front there. It says, make your mark 2020. So at the beginning of this year, when I was coming up with what do I want to do for this year, for me, the sort of phrase for the year, the theme for the year was make your mark. And it was, if I can help somebody else, then I will make my mark on the world. So what's interesting is then this global pandemic happens, and now I have an opportunity to share some of the things that have been shared with me and help other people make their mark, which is really cool to see that I'm able to step into this theme that I said at the beginning of the year is actually happening. So when you come up with that word or phrase for the year, man, write it down on everything. Put it on a sticker on your bathroom mirror, write it down, put it on your monitor, on your laptop, everywhere that you're going to see it every day as a reminder to keep you focused. Some other things that you can do to activate your plan: create and share. So when you go through this process, and it can be exhausting, I know a lot of you are like, oh my goodness, this is a lot. It's super, super important. And we have the time now. We really do. So take some time, carve it out, and do this. I like to, at the end of this, take all the information and put together a couple slides in a PowerPoint that I send out to family and friends. So I review it with my wife, I review it with my friends, and I just kind of go, hey, here's what I did. I went and set out my desired outcomes. Here's my goals. Here's what I would like to do this year. And I just kind of want you to review it and tell me what you think. And that is a great way to hold you accountable, but it's also a great way to get feedback, right? To understand, am I going down the right path? Set up checkpoints. Go ahead and schedule it in your calendar, daily, weekly, quarterly, and yearly. How am I doing? Am I on the right path? Am I sticking to what I said I was going to do? And the next part of that is zig and zag. Guess what? Life changes. Things happen. What you started out with as your primary goal may change, and you need to give yourself the freedom to ask the question, what is most important right now? And what real life steps can I take to make that happen? And finally, rinse and repeat. This is a process that you should be doing all the time. You don't just have to do a huge retreat every year, 1, 2, 3 days. You can go through pieces and parts of this process every week, every month, and ask yourself some of these same questions, but repeat it. And what's been amazing for me is, now that I've done this, I think 6 times, to look back and see how I've grown, to see the things that have happened, to celebrate the cool moments, to see the things I didn't do, to see the things I did do, and why was I able to achieve some of those. So the more that you do this, the better you're going to get at it, and you're going to have more information to look at and be able to, I think, make your mark on the world. So that's been square one: review, celebrate, plan, activate. You're going to get a copy of this presentation, but I'd love to go to some questions now and get a chance to hear from Jim, not only on the presentation that I've just shared, but I've also asked him to ask some questions and share some resources on some of his favorite tools on how to find out what makes you tick. So, Jim, I'm going to stop sharing and throw it over to you. Once Jim is done, we'll take Q&A. So write down your questions, answers. I would love myself, Jim, any of us to help answer any questions you have. So,
Hey, Jose. Hey, thanks a lot for that. Hey, this is the first time I've ever done this with anybody, and probably with you. Hey, how about a virtual applause for Jose?
thank you, Jim.
And thanks for, well, some of us were unmuted, but it was a cacophony of sound, I'm sure. Yeah. Hey, my greatest passion in life is helping people understand who they are so that they can live up their potential and maximize their impact at home and work. And so one of the things that really has impacted me in a significant way is learning my strengths. And so that's really what I want to kind of talk about real briefly. A strength is anything that you produce. And so if you understand your strengths and how you're wired, that's a great jumping off point for all of life. It helps you with personally, professionally, life's challenges, working towards your goals. So it's the input of everything that Jose was talking about. It's just one of those assessment things that you can do. And a strength is something you productively apply in a consistent way, innate being a part of you that you apply in a consistent way. So if you apply it towards your goals, toward your productivity, towards your personal and professional life, there's even research that shows that workers who utilize their strengths on a regular basis are more engaged in work. It just makes sense. If you bring who you are to life all the time and you productively apply, it really, you just become more engaged, better at it, and having exponential growth in it. But here's the problem. The research shows that only 30% of people know what their strengths are and who they are. So what I'm going to share with you, some tools and some things that you can access. But my big idea is I really want you to understand who you are, not necessarily the Strength Finder words, the titles. I want you to gain descriptive language so that you're not confused anymore about who you are. Language that engages and ignites your soul. So if these tools help to that end, then we're winning the day. So I'm not necessarily saying, do the strength, like some people will say, do the Strength Finder, do the Enneagram, you'll know yourself, da, da, da. I think the biggest idea is getting some descriptive language that will change your life. I took the Strength Finder, that happens to be one tool that you could use, in 2004. I was sitting, so if you can imagine, Starbucks, Johnson City, on Roan Street, and I'm sitting against the window, and I read my report that comes out to me. I look at it, I look out the window, I see outside and a reflection of myself, and I start crying. And I say to myself, why hasn't anybody ever told me this of who I am? No wonder I'm so frustrated in life. And so then I started digging in and finding language that really kind of made that come alive more in my live in my life. Anyway, so you can take the Strength Finder. The Clifton Strength Finder, you can go on the Gallup Strength Center and take that. You can do two things. You could find your 5 top themes. If you haven't done that already, you can do, for $19.95, you can do your 5 top themes. And if you want to spend, I think it used to be like $74. I think now $39 or $49, you can look at all 34 themes. And why that's important is because you can see the top 5, you can see the top 10, but then you can also see words and language of the bottom 5 of things that you should never do, you should never say, I'll do that, and just kind of walk away from those things. So it's good in terms of comparison of what potentially those things strong in you and what things are not so powerful. There's another inventory that people don't know about, and it's called the VIA Character Strengths. And you can go on viacharacter.org. And it was developed in the late 90s by about 55 psychologists who were assessing what is right with people. And so and it has, I think there's 25 different uh, titles, and they serve as language. And if you read through it, you can say, yeah, that's me. Wow, I didn't know that was a part of me. And and so it helps you gain language. All right, here's another thing. If we're still pursuing that idea of getting language and just having it become a part of you, I would recommend ask 4 or 5 friends to give you feedback on these questions. What do you think my 3 to 5 talents or strengths are? And ask them to write sentences regarding that. Number 2, what knowledge, abilities, or specific skills do I possess? And ask them plain up and straight, what are some things that I'm not good at, and what gaps do I have? It's helpful to know that. I would advocate that in the strengths, with using strengths language, you should focus on those and delegate, give up, never go to the things that you're not strong at. Then I would, number 4 is, in terms of processing those kind of things, is write a paragraph or 2 of who am I and what do I value most. You could do those in bullet form, or you can write paragraphs, but who I am, I really spend some time. Remember, this is the input to Jose's process. If you have this going into the next year, you'll be teed up to kind of work in that through that process better.
That's awesome, Jim.
So those are some things that I thought of, Jose, when you asked me to kind of contribute to the conversation. And then also, if you want to take 20 or 30 minutes just to discuss those specific things, your strengths, your talents, how you're wired. If you want to take 20 or 30 minutes to spend time with me, you can do that by going to fickley.com and signing up for 20 minutes or 30 minutes or so.
I would highly recommend everybody do that. It's free, 20 minutes. You can chat with Jim. I know he's talked with a lot of us that are here right now, but take advantage of that. No matter where you're at, it's always good to have somebody else to talk with. Thank you so much, Jim. I really appreciate that. Let's throw it to questions. What questions do you have? Either myself, Jim, or anything else that we can help answer. We still got about 12 minutes here, so would love to help answer your questions.
I'll start you off with a question. What do you guys see as typical barriers that keep people from who say, yes, doing this is a good idea, to actually doing it? Because I think most of us hear this and say, yeah, that's good. Maybe you've done it before, maybe you haven't. But just how do you get over that hump of stopping what life's bringing at you every day, whether it's a lot less or a lot more at the moment? How do you get yourself over that? What have you seen work for people?
I'll say for me, I listen to my calendar. Like, if my calendar tells me to be somewhere, I will be there. And so I go into my calendar and I put out the amount of time, and I put the big priority red flag on it, and a noise and a reminder and everything. And then I share that with my team and with my wife and everybody, that they know, hey, this time I'm going to do this, and this is important. That, for me, is the only way it gets done. If I don't schedule the time and carve it out, it won't happen. So that's how I get it done. And it depends on what motivates you too. What moves you to action? What are the things that push you to get things done? And leveraging that so that you will get it done.
I have a thought, Todd, that we have to get to a point. I've been mulling this around for the last 3 or 4 days. We have to get to the point where we start thinking. Well, we're doers and we're thinkers, but I would challenge us to be thinking about how we're thinking and what we're doing and why. And so why? And if you come to life with that premise, with that posture, why wouldn't you do something like this, where you're continuing to evaluate who you are and how you can tee yourself up for success, to live up to who God's really made you to be.
The toughest thing too is I think there are some cultural barriers and to doing something like this. And sometimes other people can either make fun of that or dismiss it, or a lot of times too, if you're carving out a big chunk of time, that's time away from family, time away from work you could be doing to make money. Like those are the kind of questions I think I get a lot of people are like, well, I can't take this time to go do that. I've got work to do. I got family, etc. And yet you look at successful people, and successful people take time to go through the process. Every single one of them, they're successful because they continually sharpen their blade and they're ready to go.
Yep. Yep.
Good question. What other questions do you guys have? Anything?
I tend to be visionary, kind of like you, Jose, but I struggle to bring things down on the ground a lot of the times. So getting organized and staying focused are like two things that I've been trying to work out in my late 20s, figuring out what works for me. So wondering what works for some of you guys on staying focused. Like, what does it look like to put this into a practice in a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly way? That way you're staying focused on what your goal is for that year.
The buddy system. The buddy system is not just for saving kids from drowning at summer camp. It works anywhere and everywhere. And I've worked out more in the last year and a half because my wife started working out with me. Mm-hmm. And when I didn't want to go work out at noon, Shannon would be like, Jose, get your butt in the car. We're going to work out. And so there, you have to find a buddy who is either going down the same path or is willing to hold you accountable, or because nobody can do this on their own. I've yet to find somebody that's perfect that can make this happen by themselves. Everybody needs a coach. Everybody needs a buddy. Everybody needs a small circle of friends that are going to help them get to where they need to go. So find a buddy for your goal and then hold them accountable and you accountable. And then when you achieve it and cheers it together, that's the cool part, right? That's what works for me.
Yeah, I think this process can feel pretty lonely sometimes when it's all in your head. And so do you send this out to people like when you're finished with it?
Yep.
So do you put it in like a one pager or something and shoot it out, or?
I'm a visual guy, and I give presentations all the time. So I make a presentation. I go into Google Slides and I put in photos and I put in the words, and I don't share everything, but just kind of a condensed, it's 10 to 12 slides. And I'm like, and it's also to prove to Shannon, my wife, hey, I didn't just go into the woods to get a glass of wine and set fire to stuff.
I would like to say that he makes me sit down with him and he goes through the whole presentation. So it's something that he needs to process, but it's nice to be on the receiving end of it to see what he came up with. Mm-hmm. Everybody's different. So for me, when I do my year-end review, it's a fraction of the time that it takes Jose, but I do it. And then I may share it with, I have a business coach, so that's who I share that with. And I'd share it with Jose too. It's just not as big of a production. It just depends on what your personality is. I know he can't help it. Just depends on what your personality is, but it is good to share that information so you're not hearing it in a vacuum and you get feedback.
Yeah, and however, one page or a photo or whatever, just you have to share it with somebody, because it's like going off to the mountaintop and finding the answer and then coming back and keeping it to yourself. That's not going to help you. You've got to figure out a way to share it with others and do it in a way that inspires them and keeps you accountable. It's a good back and forth.
Hey Kyle, this is Abraham. One of the things that I really struggled with the past, well, probably a long time, but especially now in the kind of staying at home is just feeling like I never got anything accomplished. And so I just started, I think I'm in the same boat as Jose and you, but just started a just simple dry erase board. And just kind of like, what am I just going to get? Like, here's 4 things that I'm going to get done today. And the whole stay-at-home dad thing, like some of that is like unload the dishwasher. But one of those is like, it allows me to focus and I can just go back and look at that throughout the day. But like, oh shoot, I got sidetracked on this thing, but oh yeah, I do need to do the dishwasher. And then I can mark it off, which feels really good. And I feel like I've done something for the day. And then also on the bottom, it's just like, I need to do these things every single day. And then I can just click them off. And it's like this simple, kind of what Jose said at the end of the year, you're going back and looking at what you accomplished. So at the end of the day, I'm like, hey, I did 4 things and I got my 3 out of my 4 daily things accomplished. And then the other piece is, Jose talked about the Darren Hardy best year ever. And it's it's like a journal and a whole thing, but it goes through the same kind of piece, but in a, much more, I mean, like your weekly rhythm, your reviews, wins, losses, fixes, lessons, all your big goals. And for me, it's just a much more, just very simple. It's all written down. And so I kind of started this a couple years ago and then let it drop, but realized that this is what I need, my brain needs to help me stay focused. And it's been really good just on this little whiteboard. And so I'm kind of in the process of starting the whole best year ever and getting all those goals down so I can focus and move forward.
Good. Yeah, Michael Hyatt has a similar, doesn't he? He has a journal. I think you can do that too with him.
Yeah, the Free to Focus, it's also on the book list as well. Is a good, that one's pretty meaty. If you really like details and data, that would be a good one for you.
Yeah.
We've got a few more minutes. What other questions? How can we help you all? Anybody here, whether you're on camera or not, what can we do to help you to make your mark this year? Or any other questions that you have? No questions.
I'm wondering if you'll be doing any more of these this year. Do you have any of that written down?
I do not have this written down. This has been a very personal process for me, and I've only shared it with a few friends. And thanks to Carly, it was Carly's idea, our community manager at Spark. She helps out on the Flavor Inc. team as well. And she's like, Jose, you need to share this process. And so this was really kind of a test more than anything of just, are people in a place where they need something like this? So the short answer is we don't have one scheduled yet, but I definitely am going to do more of things like this. So there will be more. I just don't know what it looks like yet. And I'd love to hear from you guys. What can I do to help? What can Jim do to help? What do you need? And yes, Jody, we did record this, so you'll be able to go back and watch it. So I would love to entertain those questions and see what we can do to help. One other thing, we have a great list of resources. Earl Nykirk is a photographer friend of mine. We've worked together at racetracks and had a lot of fun. He's an amazing photographer. He doesn't just have a great Instagram account. But Earl has made a great offer as well. Earl, you want to share with us about taking some photos of folks if they need them?
Sure. Basically, the big thing nowadays, I'm feeling sort of ancient here, except for a few people, maybe Jim, that I'm almost.
Just talk. You just talking.
I'm almost 60, so a lot of this journaling stuff seems really bizarre to me, but it's just one of those things. But one thing that never changes is you need a picture of yourself that shows what you look like and who you are. There are those jokes that my profile picture was taken 25 years ago and I don't look like that anymore. I'm offering, and we're sort of working hand in hand with Eric Donahue in Johnson City. We both use the studio down there across from Main Street Pizza. And if somebody would like to update their headshot, we joked earlier about people use selfies, although Amy, your selfie is actually really good. A lot of people have selfies.
Thank you.
Or they have pictures where, they cut their spouse out, or you sort of see a dog in the background, or, you need a professional look. If you don't take the time to show yourself in a professional way, who's going to hire you to do a professional job? You have to be and look what you do. Jose has a look about him. I mean, you don't see him half done. He's always on. Whenever you see him at the track, even if he's not doing something, he's always on. He's got those stickers that he gives out. He's on the ball. I'm offering, free headshot, probably 10, 15-minute session, probably give you 2, 3, 4 shots. If you would like to bring clothing changes, which women always seem to do, or guys, if you want to bring a tie, it's just one of those things where, I'm glad to go ahead and do it. I'm working with the Bristol Chamber, and then we're doing some other things, but people have lost their jobs. Jose and I, all of a sudden, when NASCAR decided not to run, we're just like, oh, what do we do now? But, you just to offer a headshot, you can go to my website. You can spell my name there. It's nykirkimage.com. You can see some examples. Jose said, like my Instagram. I still do the Facebook. But just offering that service, if you would like to have, a headshot done, and, it'll make you think about things too, about maybe I should get the haircut. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should. Now, obviously, in a good time for the hair product thing, but.
Well, you hit the nail on the head with the personality. You want your image, a lot of times the profile or whatever is based on your personality. So I think that you're spot on. You got to be able to show who you are in an honest way through your photo too. So thank you so much for offering that. We'll have Carly send out some more information to everybody too about that. Also a list of some of the books and links and things we've talked about. We're a few minutes over. Does anybody else have any questions before we wrap this up? I don't want to leave any questions hanging out there. Anybody? Last chance. Well, thank you guys so much. I love doing this. I really enjoy it. I appreciate the fact that you guys took the time to come hang out with us today, and look forward to meeting up again, hopefully sometime in person. That would be great at some point. But until then, we're going to continue to do more of these virtual webinars. And so thank you guys so much. And I appreciate it. Have a very spicy day. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. And we'll reach out via email. We'll send you some more resources. And have a great Thursday. It's Thursday, by the way, everybody. In case
Every day Sunday.
All right. Have a great day, everybody. And feel free to stick around for a few minutes. If you got any other questions, I'll be here for a few minutes. I'll hang out for a little bit.